like to call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. We'll begin with O Canada. Trustees, we did have somebody call in requesting to be a delegation tonight. So it's Matthew Donovan speaking to the naloxone kits. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the delegation. Trustee Watson? Yes, motion. Second, Trustee Ramsey, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? The agenda is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, celebrating board activities. Trustee Ramsey?
Announcement?
Or announcements?
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I just wanted to mention briefly and recognize a former trustee colleague. He served with distinction on the board a number of terms back. Gary Ferguson. He's in the audience just out of interest tonight to see how things are going in the new boardroom. So, special welcome, Gary.
Yes, on behalf of all of the trustees, welcome back. Thank you. Trustee Ferguson. Thank you. Anyone else? Trustee Woodcock?
Thank you. Through you, I had the pleasure of representing the board at a school day event at Wilfrid Laurier. They did a football game against, I don't know who won, against Windsor. Oh, that's awful. I was there for the ceremonial crossing of the coin, and that was a lot of fun. There were approximately 3,000 elementary students from both the public board and the Catholic board there to enjoy some university sports. Also, I had the honor of representing the board at the 166th commencement exercise at Gulf Collegiate Institute. Always a pleasure to be at that particular graduation, not that it's a pleasure to be at all of them, but it takes place in Tassie Hall, which is a phenomenally beautiful part of the school. If you ever have a chance to go, please go and take it in. It's a beautiful, beautiful building, and it was a great ceremony. And they do a very interesting, they have a stairway of excellence, and they induct an alum from the school every year. And this year it was Paul Sutherland, who attended GCI from 62 to 67. And it was a very interesting induction ceremony.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Woodcock. Trustee Miller?
Thank you, through the chair. I also had the honor of bringing greetings from the board at WO's commencement on Friday. This year it was at Binghamton, not in Stratford, so there was no concern that I might go out of Broadway or say a Shakespearean soliloquy. I kept that to myself, but it was a lovely evening, and we were actually piped in by the retired principal of Hodkin, which was unique, and it was a great evening. Thank you.
Trustee Smith?
Thank you. So many moons ago, the last Monday of September, I attended Kitchener City Hall, and where they recognized 2 people to receive Governor General Awards. One of them was Hussein Jamal. They did it, I feel badly for them that they got buried, not the Governor General, but anyway. So Hussein was recognized for the work he has done in terms of, and it was awarded to him 2 years ago, so it's taken 2 years for them to give it to him. But for all the work he had done in terms of, building up the recognition of students in our board, some of the work that he's done with languages and a number of awards that he won. So it was really nice. He got the biggest introduction. The other person that was recognized was Tracy, and I just lost her name, but she's running for trustee for the Catholic Board. She has run for a provincial position, so she was recognized for the work she's done since she stopped running, and so she got some good recognition. But it was really nice that Hussein was recognized, and I'm sorry that more people couldn't come because we had a board meeting that night. Also on Saturday, my husband and I both were invited, so there was a changeover for the Cambridge, I've just lost the name of the Royal Highland Fusion, but for where Brian Rainville was the commander, and it was his last duty as commander of his battalion. So it was really nice to be there to see lots of Mr. Scott was there, Mr. Max was there representing the director. It was a really good turnout. The former director was there. So it was great just recognizing Mr. Rainville's work, and then recognizing the new person, that the new commander that's coming in, seeing a lot of students, a lot of volunteers. So it was a really great, a little chilly, great opportunity to be in Cambridge for the recognition. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Smith. Trustee Waterfall?
Over the last 2 weeks, I had the pleasure of bringing greetings from the board at 2 commencement ceremonies. On October 5th, I was at Jacob Hespeler Secondary School, and on October 12th, I was at Preston High School. I had a chance to talk to some students, staff, and some award presenters that came from kind of around the province and some from the states to present some awards. So that was an interesting meeting.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Waterfall. I also have a couple of announcements here from Director Brian.
Through the Chair to Trustees, a quick announcement. It's for an invitation to our next System Leaders meeting, be occurring on November the 1st. We actually start and open the doors about 7:45, and we're finished by 11:30. It's going to be a great System Leaders meeting. We're going to be focused on building inclusive schools as a topic, talking about bias, blind spots, and micro-inclusions. We'll send out a formal invitation to the trustees tomorrow with all the details. And if you could let us know if you're attending to Karen Songbird. So that will go tomorrow morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Did you have 2?
Just one.
Just 1. Sorry, I said 2. That was my mistake. Trustee Henry, did you have anything?
Thank you. I just wanted to, if I may, Mr. Chair, come to the defense of Trustee Smith. Brian Rainville was the honorary colonel of the Royal Highland Fusiliers.
Teamwork. Helping each other out. Thank you, Trustee Henry. Excellent. Moving on. So we are now at the delegations, and we have Matthew Donovan for speaking about naloxone kids. Give me 1 second here. Dust off the delegation procedure. In accordance with the board's bylaws, delegations have up to 10 minutes to address the board. Any exceptions to this rule will require a majority vote. All remarks are to be confined to the issue you are addressing, and discourteous language, reference to personalities, or statements contravening the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms will not be tolerated. At the beginning of your presentation, the timer will be set for 10 minutes. When 9 minutes have passed, I will advise you that you have 1 minute remaining to bring your comments to a close. Following each presentation, trustees will have an opportunity to ask only questions of clarification relating to remarks. And again, to keep that simple, we'll just ask the trustees to repeat the part of the presentation that they're unclear about, give the delegate a chance to clarify that part of it. The item you are addressing is on the agenda tonight, that's correct? So we don't have to worry about that part. You're welcome to stay for the entire meeting, but are not obligated to do so. But judging by the camera, I'm guessing that you're going to. So with that, whenever you're ready, as soon as you start talking, I'll hit start. Take your time.
Perfect. Thank you all for having me tonight. So I just wanted to speak briefly to the motion that I know is potentially being discussed tonight about naloxone kits. For some context, I'm taking this from my website, so the full information is there, as well as all the sources where I've got the information from, but I just wanted to briefly speak today. So I know that right now the WRDSB has currently deferred a motion to introduce naloxone kits within schools. Naloxone is a medication that can be used to help treat a suspected opioid overdose. However, use of this medication exposes the individual administering treatment to potential health risks, as well as potentially placing them into an environment they were not properly prepared for. The statement was made that naloxone kits are akin to defibrillators. Ideally, they're never needed, but they're there just in case. However, there are key differences between AEDs and naloxone kits, both that the likelihood for additional harm is much greater during the administration of naloxone, and also the fact that AEDs, unlike naloxone, provide incredibly clear instructions to guide bystanders during times of extreme stress and shock. I do not believe that equipping teachers with naloxone is the solution to this problem. Instead, I believe it's critical to have open communication with both Waterloo Regional Police Service as well as the Region of Waterloo Paramedic Services to effectively stay in front of the issue. As well, it's critical to provide funding, advocate for funding towards preventative measures such as drug education and prevention campaigns within schools. I'd like to do a bit of a deep dive on three main topics. So the first is safety. There are numerous studies that discuss just how dangerous opioid overdoses are. Due to the incredibly small amount of the drug required to cause an overdose, it is possible for those attempting to provide treatment to suffer an overdose themselves simply due to accidental exposure. This is something that has been confirmed by hospitals throughout the region. I personally am a first responder for Laurier's emergency response team, providing advanced first aid care on the Laurier campus. While we carry equipment such as AEDs, EpiPens, and oxygen tanks, we do not carry naloxone kits. This is partially due to the increased level of risk that providing naloxone treatment for a suspected overdose would create. It is also important to note that all members of the emergency response team complete a 40-hour Red Cross first responder course, as well as monthly refresher training, something not currently done by teachers. If teachers are to be expected to provide naloxone during a suspected overdose, it will be imperative that they are properly trained and provided with refresher training on an ongoing basis. On the frequency side, in 2017, there were 65 deaths due to opioid overdoses in Waterloo Region. However, there have been fewer overdoses during the same period in 2018. While it does appear that the number of medical emergencies involving opioids has been increasing over the past few years, two pieces of information are currently unclear: the number of overdoses involving minors, and the number of overdose incidents located on school property involving minors. Before we can work on finding a solution to a problem, we first need to clearly define the problem itself. Are students using opioids on school property? And if yes, are they using opioids to such a degree that investigating measures to counter opioid overdoses is warranted? And finally, on a responsibility side, I do not believe that we can continue to ask more of our teachers. Already, we expect teachers to educate, mentor, guide, counsel, provide minor first aid, and so much more. We can't continually give additional responsibilities to teachers while expecting them to do everything they currently do. In addition, responding during a medical emergency is not an easy task. Even after completing extensive training, one can never be fully prepared to handle every possible situation. While it is easy for us to want teachers to do everything possible to keep children safe, we need to realize that they are only human. Instead, I propose a few actions. Work with the Waterloo Regional Police Services and Region of Waterloo Paramedic Services to identify the prevalence of opioid overdoses within WRDSB schools. And should WRPS and RWPS identify that there is a significant risk of overdoses within WRDSB schools, advocate for launching a committee tasked with proposing solutions, potential solutions to the trustees as well as to parents. Work with community groups and interested parties to develop additional educational material focused on drug education and prevention. And finally, create an anonymous website where students can submit information surrounding drug usage and prevalence at their schools. Again, before we can solve a problem, we need to know whether or not there is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Trustees, if there's any questions of clarification, if there is a part of the presentation that was unclear, if you could remind us what part of the presentation that was. I will advise everybody that on folio 38, this is on the agenda already, so if there's probing questions or questions that are involving anything outside of the presentation, there will be time for that tonight. Trustee Watson?
Great, thank you. Within your delegation, you had mentioned that you're a first responder and you don't have an naloxone kit. And yet, there's information out there that universities and colleges are stocking up. So whose responsibility is it at the university and college if it's not yours?
So all I can speak to is at Wilfrid Laurier University. So in that capacity, as the on-campus first response team, we, as I said, do not carry naloxone. It is also my understanding that the on-campus special constable services at Wilfrid Laurier University does not carry naloxone kits. Should an incident involving a suspected opioid overdose occur on campus, our procedure and our protocol would be to contact special constables, and they would then contact the regional ambulance services or police departments.
So you don't have
Okay,
naloxone
we
kits
do
at
not.
all?
we're probing here, so I think there's an appropriate time.
Well,
His presentation was that he doesn't carry a naloxone kit. So if we're unclear about whether or not he carries a naloxone kit, that's the question. Asking who does is not in the presentation, and it's not a question of clarification. And
it
then
is a
to
question,
probe
so can I speak?
Sure.
Okay, so a question of clarification, so if someone provides information and you want a question of clarification, there
But
is
that,
some,
that's,
there-
no, that's not a no, that is not a question of
the
clarification.
information
That
that I have heard that colleges and universities do have naloxone, that's just the point I'm trying to make.
And
Okay.
I am in no way trying to take away that, to say later, during the naloxone,
It's okay, it's okay. We can
that's the
move on.
time for it, that's the time for it. It's not a question of clarification, so thank you very much. Matthew, another question of clarification, Trustee Harrington?
Yes, you stated in your presentation that administering naloxone was itself dangerous to the administrator of the, can you explain to me how and why?
So, to my understanding, feel free to cut me off if we're probing here. My understanding is trace amounts of the opioid are able to be transmitted through sweat or other bodily emissions, such to the extent where skin-to-skin contact, for example, could transmit enough of the opioid to potentially cause an overdose. I can't speak to the likelihood of this, but as I mentioned, it's something that I've been aware that hospitals within the region have advised their nurses and doctors to make sure they're using personal protective equipment during suspected opioid treatments.
Thank you very much, Matthew, appreciate it. Thank you, trustees. Questions? Moving on. Next item of business, we have policy and governance on folio 1. We have review of board policy 1000, display of flags, and we have Director Bryant for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and two trustees. Folio 6, actually, in your package is our current policy, and you can see that what we're presenting tonight for your approval are folio 1 to 5. This is much like a procedure more than what you've seen before as a policy, and the reason being is because we're really trying to make clarification with respect to the board policy display of flags. So we've really written out the procedure in terms of how we display flags within the Waterloo Region District School Board. We cross-referenced this policy development with those in other school boards as well. So we've double-checked and looked at other school boards and taken what we feel is good procedure in terms of displaying the flags. So I'm not going to read through all of this. Pretty well, folios 1 to 5 would all be in red as you receive your updates and so on, but this is all new for your approval. So we've given you the preamble and the general, and we've even included the definitions here. In number 4 on folio 1, we talked about dignity of the national flag of Canada. And as you proceed through the policy, you'll see that we've explained exterior flags, which we have, but we also have interior flags. So we've mapped those out too in terms of explanation of how we display flags in both of those areas. We've also talked about the hardware requirement in terms of flags and so on in our schools. As you're aware, many of our schools just have one flagpole, so that takes on a different kind of procedure for us when we're displaying more than one flag, as we've had experience in the past. On folio number 5 then, this actually is a flag display request, because from time to time we do get requests from schools or from other sites wishing to lower their flag to half-mast. And this request form really allows us to monitor and coordinate the displaying of flags, because it could very well be that the good information coming from one site should be applied elsewhere as well and at the Ed Center. So it gives us an opportunity to really coordinate and learn more about why flags are being lowered. And it's also being coordinated, key within application and implementation of this policy is our communications department, who really monitor this and work on this and keep people apprised of why flags are being lowered throughout the region and when we fly different flags as well. So, Mr. Chair, that's really our report. I know there's a lot of information here, and we'd be pleased to answer any questions at this time.
Excellent, thank you. Before we get to questions, if we could have a motion to get it on the floor, approval of the agenda. Trustee Miller, second. Trustee Woodcock, thank you. With that, there's a motion to approve the policy as written on the floor. Speak to the motion, Trustee Watson.
Yes, on folio 2, under 6.2, where it has following occasions, I'm just wondering, how did we get that, those particular holidays? I mean, are those all regulated across? Are they regulated within the ministry? Like, who determines
Director Bryant.
which days are determined?
Through the chair to Trustee Watson, I could have communication services respond to this, as they did much of the research, but these are some of the national days that we would observe. There could be many more that would come along that we would look at, and that's within the application of this policy as well, so there could be more to add to this. These are some of them that we would look at observing as national days.
Okay, so just a follow-up. So with respect to the flag request, can the request come from a group of parents or community members? I understand the principal is the person that fills out this form, but can community members and parents bring forward a request as well? Or is it just determined by the principal and superintendent and director of education?
Director Bryant.
Through the chair to Trustee Watson, that's an excellent question. I would say on first look at that because it's a school site, it's on a school site, it would be the operation of the principal to monitor the flag. If parents came in and talked to the principal and said that here's something that's happening within our community that would warrant the lowering of the flag, and they felt that that was appropriate, they'd fill the request form and then send it in to us, and that would be coordinated that way. But the flags are really under the operation of the school principal, or the site of where that may be would be the supervisor in that site.
Trustee Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Director Bryan. Looking at folio 1, under 4.3.3, around the dignity of the national flag. And then it says here in the proposed policy that the flag should be flown above any other flag when sharing the same flagpole. And then it says legal references, Department of Canadian Heritage. But when I checked, and I double-checked again on their site, it says that the national flag of Canada should always be flown on its own mast or flagpole. And flag protocol states that it is improper to fly 2 or more flags on the same mast or flagpole. For example, one beneath the other. So where did 4.3.3 come from, please?
Through the chair to Trustee Ramsey, this was a discussion that we had when we raised the pride flag in June, and the research that we did at that time indicated that it was a guideline, and if there's only one flag pole, that we could actually put up for two. So we are taking it from the research that was done back in previous 2 years in June when we raised the pride flag, and we used that research to apply it to this policy.
So barely, the department, when it's referenced the Department of Canadian Heritage, we're not really following those guidelines, are we? Through you, Mr. Chair, to the director.
Director Ryan?
Through the chair, I believe if I could call upon our communications officer who also looked into this and has that information.
Chief Communications Officer Russell?
Through the chair to Trustee Ramsey, in consultation with the Heritage Organization, it's actually specific to federal government buildings themselves, and then beyond that, individual organizations have the autonomy to use those as guidelines and make that determination themselves, whether they will fly a second flag on one pole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the response. I won't be supporting the policy as it is. We are part of government, and we are elected, and if we want to fly the pride flag, we should find a flagpole for it. And I've always said that I would support that, and I'd support fundraising for that, but on the same pole with the national flag, no. So,
Thank you, Trustee Ramsey.
thank you.
Anyone else? Motion on the floor to approve the policy is seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on, folio 7, review of, sorry, Trustee Smith.
I have a quick question. Today, all trustees got an email from a constituent with suggestions for changes. Before we go on, there was some errors, et cetera, so I can just pass them on, but I don't really have to be read out, so.
Yeah, we can maybe just forward that to people. Thank you, Trustee Smith. Folio 7, review of board policy 1010, accessibility for Ontarians with disabilities, and we have Superintendent Miller.
Through the chair and trustees, the policy has been reviewed, and there's been 2 slight edits for your consideration.
Thank you. Can we get a motion to approve the policy and second it so we can get it on the floor? Trustee Hendry? Trustee Miller, second? The motion is on the floor. Discuss the motion. Trustee Hendry?
Thank you. Through the chair, and I think I know the answer, but I can understand why we took out in the implementation, because that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the context it's there, so I agree with that. But I'm wondering out loud, the rest of it where we say the application of appropriate assisted technology and alternative forms of communications, that to me would almost give the impression that we have access to those right now, which obviously we don't for everything. So I'm wondering if we put in, or if maybe somebody could explain, perhaps Scott could explain, upon request or when required for any staff member in the performance of their job requirement. But maybe that's understood in the policy, and I just want that clarification.
Superintendent Miller? No,
Through the chair to Trustee Henry. As it stands right now, we do have a one-to-one sort of assistive technology program for all of our staff, and as well as the accessibility of assistive technology and augmented communication to our students who need it. And that is something that has become a universal accommodation for all of our students. So those devices and so forth are accessible and available all the time to our students.
Follow-up, Trustee Hendry?
Yes, I understand the student part of it for sure, but I'm wondering, again out loud, if someone applies for a position at the board, is this policy going to take effect at that particular point in time, so that if they are requiring some sort of assistive device or alternative form of communication, that would not be a barrier to them when they apply for their position?
Superintendent Miller?
Through the chair, Trustee Henry, my apologies for not understanding your first question. That would apply, that we would be able to find the equipment and so forth for someone to fulfill their job requirements and or apply to a position in our system.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Watson?
Thank you. Through you to Superintendent Miller, I know I wasn't able to attend the last SEAC because I had a candidate meeting, but was this policy brought to SEAC where they had opportunity to give feedback on the changes made here?
Superintendent Miller?
Through the chair, Trustee Watson, yes, see, I had an opportunity to provide feedback on these calls.
Thank you.
I have Trustee Judelson Kelly and then Woodcock.
Through the chair to Superintendent Miller, I was just wondering, was curious as to the rationale of taking out in a timely manner.
Superintendent Miller?
Sure. Through the chair, Trustee Judelson Kelly, that was done in a manner to make I guess the assumption is that we always work in a responsive manner and do things as quickly as possible, and to just make that language more concise.
Trustee Woodcock?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. I'm wondering, I'm surprised there's no admin related references, administrative procedures listed here. Could someone clarify that, please?
Superintendent Miller?
Sure. Through the chair, to Trustee Woodcock, there is not a related administrative procedure that goes along with this policy.
There's a whole bunch of them? Oh, sorry.
Follow up?
There's a lot of them, or there's no procedure regarding the appropriate assistive technology or anything like that? Nothing specific?
Through the chair, Trustee Woodcock, no, there is not.
Okay, thank you.
There's a motion to approve on the floor. Another question? Trustee Hendry?
Yes, I brought this up at SEAC, and I think it's probably appropriate in tonight's forum that at this particular point in time, the Accessibility Standards Act, or Standards Committee, that council is now reviewing transportation as the next step. But the one after that will be education. And when that's reviewed, we're going to see significant changes in our requirements here at the board. So it's something that we should be aware of. And for staff, we still are one of the best boards in the province when it comes to where we are with accessibility. So kudos to staff for that.
Thank you, Trustee Hendry. There's a motion on the floor. It's seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion to approve that policy is passed. Carried. Moving on, review of board policy 3000, trustee honoraria, and we have coordinating superintendent Gerard. Do we have a question before we get there?
No,
Oh, okay, sorry. Motion to accept, Trustee
motion
Hendry.
to accept as is.
As is, second. Trustee Waterfall had her hand up first. It's in there. Do we want to have Mr. Gerard give the Trustee Woodcock?
We can, I'm not saying that. I just want to provide for information for trustees that at the OPSPA Board of Directors meeting, there has been a recent communication, recent August, government issued memo B14, talks about funding for trustee honoraria, and that amount, the previous government was considering a raise of $500 per trustee, and the current government has decided that the base amount shall remain with $5,900, and that that increase will not be considered at this time, just so you know.
There's three of us around this table who don't really care.
Thank you.
Just kidding, of course we can. Coordinating Superintendent Gerard.
Thank you, through you, Chair, trustees. Just a few brief comments on this. So this package would have been made public around noontime on Friday. Towards the end of the day, the amended regulation came out from the government. So I have two friendly amendments to this. It doesn't really necessarily change the context of it. But in legal references, I would just want to limit it to Ontario Regulation 357/06. Take out the specific particulars. And in paragraph 1.1, the old legislation didn't refer to the new term because it was dated. So I'd just like to update in paragraph 1.1, December 2014 to December 2018. And we are compliant with the new legislation. As previously mentioned, any other comments related to other increases to this remuneration for trustees has not found its way into the new regulation.
Are you okay with the change in the amendments as requested by Coordinating Superintendent Gerard, and who seconded that? Trustee Marco, you're okay as well? All right. Motion to approve the policy with the amendments from Coordinating Superintendent Gerard is on the floor and seconded. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on, folio 11, review of board policy 4004, emergency needs expenditures, and sticking with Coordinating Superintendent Gerard.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to trustees. Presented on folio 11, a review policy, no changes from the previous iteration of policy.
Trustee Martin moves approval, second. Trustee Harrington, thank you. Anyone to speak to it? All in favor? Opposed? That policy is approved. Moving on, folio 13, review of board policy 4010, video surveillance in schools, and we have Coordinating Superintendent Weiner.
Thank you, through you to the trustees. We've had an opportunity to review board policy 4010, and we've written it to reflect what is currently occurring in our system. Significant consultation did occur, and we wanted to ensure that what we've captured here represents both our legal responsibilities and that the policy is reflective of those responsibilities as well as what our current practice is.
Thank you. Motion to approve the policy, Trustee Hendry, second. Trustee Watson, and then speak to the motion. Trustee Hendry.
Thank you, through the chair. A couple of questions. The first one is, and I didn't read through it as well as I possibly should have, but I would expect that within the policy, certainly, that there is a reasonable expectation of privacy, so we can have cameras virtually anywhere else. And my second question was if we've expanded the installation of our cameras to include not new schools, but have we moved down the list, so we're going from high schools down to senior college, down to the elementary? Where are we on that?
Coordinating Superintendent Weiner.
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Hendry. To the first question, yes, we do follow NFIPA to ensure that the privacy is there. To your second question, currently for the safe schools we have in the elementary schools. Secondary school is, right now we're in the process of upgrading the systems, and we haven't at this point put any date to talk about cameras with respect to senior public or elementary schools. However, we do know that there are questions through our administrators looking for cameras within their schools.
Trustee Hendry.
Yes, just a brief follow-up. Within the new camera systems that we're putting in, or perhaps even the existing ones, the board staff here have access online to those cameras, so that we don't have to rely on something coming from a high school through some other format to here, that some senior staff member can actually go online and view.
Coordinating Superintendent Weiner.
So through the chair to Trustee Hendry, you're correct, our security department has access to that, which is run through me, so that it's not widespread that people have access to it, but that it would be through my offices with the security department.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Watson.
Thank you. So this again, this is a longer policy and will replace the other policy, right? I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
So what's on folios 13 and 14 are the draft that we will approve, and it replaces folio 15.
So I'm wondering if, and maybe this was already answered, that if we're gonna expand this, like, will the video cameras be in actual classrooms? Or are they in the hallways, or are they outside of the school? Do we have any idea where we're gonna put like, I know we already currently have cameras and they're not supposed to be in the bathroom, there's a privacy issue. But do we plan on expanding this and putting them in classrooms, or is it just the status quo what we have now, and are they just in the hallways and out on the outside of schools?
According to Superintendent Minor?
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Watson, the cameras that we currently have installed are hallways and exterior of the building. They are not in the classrooms. They are not in washroom facilities or that. What we're doing right now is we're upgrading the systems currently in our high schools, and the systems that some of the elementary schools are asking for would be the same when we put them in. We would not be putting them into the classrooms.
Trustee Water, Trustee Waddell, sorry.
Thank you for you. On folio 14, 4.4 and 4.5, it states that the videotaping of school events and for educational and instructional purposes are not addressed in this policy. I'm just wondering if you could perhaps refer to the policy or procedure that does cover that off in this section.
According to Superintendent Minor?
Thank you, through the chair, to Trustee Waddell. This deals with video surveillance, so we wanted to make sure it was clear that we are not conducting videotaping of those events. In consultation, we also talked to other boards of education, and they ran into some difficulty because they felt that those events were actually being videotaped by board personnel. And so they had to clearly stipulate it in the policy so that it did not stipulate that those were happening through the video surveillance in school. And so we put that there for information.
Trustee Waddell?
Just a follow-up. I just think that if we could perhaps point the person that's reading this document to the policy or procedure that relates to that, then they could get that information easier.
So not saying that point 4 and point 5 shouldn't be there, but just have the policy that does govern those things referenced in that line.
Correct.
It's a friendly amendment to the motion. Is it Trustee Andrew? Is that fine? Trustee Waterfall, who seconded that? Trustee Bell seconded? So Waterfall. Yeah. Yeah, so friendly amendment just to add those policies. So, the motion with the amendment is seconded. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to reports. Folio 16, identification, placement, and review committee membership, and Superintendent Miller.
Through the Chair of Trustees, this is the annual Legislative Identification Placement and Review Committee's membership report. The school teams are highlighted in Appendix A, and it's there for your information.
So this is a recommendation. We need a motion to approve. Trustee Martin, second. Trustee Waterfall, speak to the motion. Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That recommendation is carried. Moving on to folio 28, Dune self-development areas, and inquiry and Superintendent Gerard.
Thank you, through you, Chair. On folio 28, the Dune self-development area school boundary assignments, secondary panel. I have our manager of planning, Nathan Perkina, and our senior planner, Sarah Gallagher, here with me tonight. Nathan will actually present this report to trustees.
Thank you, Matt. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Chair, trustees. The planning department regularly reviews residential development plans to estimate projected enrollment growth and assess the capacity of nearby schools to accommodate that growth. where space is insufficient, Board Policy 4012, superintendent's areas, and Admin Procedure 4992, temporary student accommodation for development areas, provide a process for creating and assigning development areas to holding schools until a more permanent long-term solution is available. Now, with respect to development areas, a permanent and long-term solution refers to a new school, a classroom addition, or a boundary change resulting from a boundary study process. Southwest Kitchener, as many of you know, is a rapidly growing area of the board's jurisdiction. It represents the largest tract of remaining residential greenfield development in Waterloo region. In response to increasing enrollment pressure at various schools, the board approved the establishment of the Dune South development areas at the December 11th, 2017 Committee of the Whole meeting. Although new facilities have been opened and constructed to accommodate elementary enrollment growth in Southwest Kitchener, Huron Heights Secondary School remains the only WRDSB secondary school in the area. The school has experienced significant enrollment growth since opening in 2006, and this year, 2018-2019 school year, it is anticipated to accommodate 1,550 students within 1,245 pupil places. Projections indicate that enrollment is expected to continue to increase over the next 10 years. In an effort to address increasing enrollment pressure at the school, a number of strategies and changes have been implemented. One, as I mentioned, the establishment and assignment of development areas to divert enrollment from areas of new development from Huron Heights Secondary School. As well, at the school level for the 2018-2019 school year, Huron Heights implemented operational changes to maximize the use of existing capacity. Namely, moving from a 5-period day to a 6-period day by implementing a double lunch period. And as well, at the May 14th, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting, trustees approved the commencement of a boundary study to address enrollment pressure at Huron Heights Secondary School. The boundary study includes Huron Heights, Forest Heights, and Cameron Heights schools, and planning staff are anticipating presenting a report to the board in November 2018 to initiate the boundary study public consultation. The Dune South development areas have been assigned to Forest Heights Collegiate Institute. Enrollment projections indicate that Forest Heights has capacity currently available and will continue to be able to accommodate the enrollment expected from the Mattamy Wildflowers and Dune South development areas assigned there. The assigned secondary school of the Dune South development areas and that of the Mattamy Wildflowers development area will be further considered during the upcoming Southwest Kitchener secondary boundary study. Please answer any questions, clarifications, trustees.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wickenock. This report is for information only, so we will enter it into the minutes as received, and if there are any questions from trustees, Trustee Woodcock.
Thank you. Through you to staff, the whole, the wildflowers area that's going to be diverted to Forest Heights for a while. Is there other transportation issues with that, or does the transportation mileage apply? You know what I mean, the walking distance?
Oh, through you, Chair, to Trustee Woodcock, the Mattamy Wildflowers area, those students are transported to Forest Heights.
Because it crosses across those.
It is farther than a 3.2 kilometer walking distance for night as well.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Trustee Watson.
Can I just get some information about the consultation process with respect to this? Like, was there any consultation? And if there was, what were some of the concerns that parents had?
Through you, Chair, to Trustee Watson, these are development areas. They are typically new plans of subdivision yet to be constructed. Before families move into them, we assign them to a temporary holding school that may be outside the immediate area.
Just follow? So, because, and this has happened in Cambridge, and then you get parents who move in, and then there are concerns. So what could we anticipate some of the concerns would be from this community? Because as soon as they purchase a home, they think that their school, and we've had like many lengthy discussions about how do we inform and how do we make sure that developers are telling them about, you know, where their children attend. So if you could just kind of just do a little follow-up of how we're going to make sure that the parents who move in are aware where their children are going to be attending.
Through you, Chair, to Trustee Watson, we undertake a number of measures to identify those areas and for people who don't know exactly who they are yet, to communicate these changes to them. We do send out messages to the Kitchener-Waterloo real estate boards indicating these changes. Where possible, we reach out to developers and indicate, you know, please let your builders that you're selling lots to or whatever know that, you know, these development area policies are in effect. We refer them to our website where we have a whole section in the planning about all the development area assignments and the policies that apply to those. As well, we've updated the School Finder app on the STSWR website where you type in your address and it tells you what school you would attend for what grade at that particular address. And we also have asked cities to make it a condition of developers to put into their subdivision agreements and agreements of purchase and sale descriptions, not specifically about what school you go to, but that you may be subject to this development area policy and may be bused to an area outside your immediate area should until a permanent solution can be in place.
Thank you.
Trustee Woodall?
Thank you, through you to staff. When you brought the report the last time about setting up the boundary review committee, it stated in that report that it was unlikely that the report would come back by January of 2019 for implementation in September 2019. So I'm just wondering if that is still the case, because if we look at the numbers, in 2019 there's going to be 136% utilization, and it's extremely critical to me. In my personal opinion, it's a critical situation for those students, and I'm just wondering if it's not going to open or not going to be changed by 2019, what the plan is as far as accommodating those students in a safe way in that first year while we wait for them to review to be finalized and approved.
Thank you to you, Chair, to you, Trustee Woodall. You are correct. In order to do the fulsome consultation for this important study, I'm hesitant to suggest we could get back with a recommendation by January 2019 for implementation for September 2019. As we've prepared for this moment, Superintendent Shantz has worked very closely with on-site administrator Sharon Heights, Jeff Link, to work through the changes that we've implemented thus far, moving from the 6-period day and the double lunch, and those are being monitored and evaluated and seeing what lessons we've learned from them, and those will be adjusted moving forward. If additional temporary accommodation is needed on site, we will bring on portables, but that situation is being monitored, and we will make sure students are accommodated in a safe way.
Regarding the portables or the temporary accommodation, how much room is left on site for additional portables? Is that going to become an issue as well?
Through you, Chair, Huron Heights, the outside space at Huron Heights is at a premium. It is challenging to place portables there. I would defer to perhaps an architect to determine how many portables we can safely fit on site according to the Ontario Building Code. But my understanding is there is room for additional portables. I'm not sure exactly how many.
Thank you.
Trustee Smith?
Thank you. Through you, just I have a quick question in terms of, you've got enrollment projections for Forest Heights, for Huron Heights, but you've got listed Cannon Heights here and you don't have any enrollment projections for them. So why not?
Through you, Chair, to Trustee Smith. We only presented the Huron Heights and Forest Heights enrollment projections because we are taking those development areas out of the Huron Heights boundary and sending those students that will come from those development areas to Forest Heights. So the enrollment projections that you see before you in the report for Huron Heights are without those development areas assigned, and for Forest Heights with those development areas assigned to Forest Heights. So when we kick off the public consultation for the secondary boundary study, that report will include enrollment projections for all 3 schools.
Okay, so you've got those numbers already and you just didn't give them to us, is that what you're saying? Sorry.
Through you, Chair, no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that because we are not assigning these development areas to Cameron Heights, we didn't feel it was necessary to present enrollment projections for Cameron Heights.
It'd just be nice to get the whole picture.
It's not connected. So the boundary study is part B, and part A is just taking kids out of one area from one school and sending them to another school. So Cameron Heights isn't part of what the picture that's being painted with those projections. And Trustee Harrington?
Yes, since the enrollment at Huron Heights is projected to go well above the maximum enrollment, what other solutions are being proposed? Are there any transportation solutions, boundary changes to move students to other high schools?
Through you, Chair, to Trustee Harrington, yes, the Southwest Kitchener boundary study will contemplate boundary changes to address the enrollment situation at Huron.
And is transportation considered part of that solution or not?
Through you, Chair, to Trustee Harrington, yes, transportation of students will likely be part of the boundary consideration given the distance between the facilities.
Thank you, trustees. That report was for information only. It's in the minutes as being received, so thank you very much, Mr. Ripna, accordingly to Superintendent Gerard. We will move on. Folio 33, major capital projects, quarterly update report. And according to Superintendent Gerard and Mr. Gerard.
Thank you, through you, Chair. On folio 33, we have our major capital projects quarterly update report for your information. Controller of Facility Services, Ian Burdett, will present this to trustees.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, Chairperson and trustees. I'm pleased to present our major capital projects report, and if you look at Appendix A, Janet Metcalf is still shown with a caution. That is because despite receiving occupancy very late on the first day of school, we are still actively working on loading the library this week, so that our library will be turned over for our student use, and still actively constructing our gymnasium. In addition, Grand River Collegiate Institute, the addition at that site is underway, and we will be working on our foundations. Ryerson Public School, the addition is well ahead of schedule. I'm pleased to report that. And in addition, Cedar Creek is coming along very nicely with second floor coming out of the ground and masonry walls going up. So our capital priorities includes about $77 million worth of work. And in addition, this quarterly report provides Annex A, which responds to a question that was asked about the wind down of the greenhouse gas reduction coming back from August 20th. And this report is provided for information.
Thank you. This is for information, so we will enter it into the minutes as being received. Trustee Hendry?
Thank you. Excuse me, through the chair to Mr. Gadet. Just for clarification on Janet Metcalf School, the symbol is for budget and scope. So is it a little of both? Is the budget in line and it's just the scope that we're concerned about?
Through the chair to Trustee Henry, it's actually scope, budget, and cost. So in this case, I meant to say schedule, scope, and budget. So our budget has increased, and we'll be coming back with a report in December on where we stand. And as well, we've experienced schedule challenges that haven't enabled us to turn over the full school.
Trustee Hendry, follow-up?
Follow-up. Just obviously, I don't know where we get the actual amount, but is the potential there for something that the board would have to approve in the budget, or is it within the what the expectations could be in this situation?
I anticipate that the board will want to approve the amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Martin?
Through you, Mr. Cadet, do you have a new estimated completion date for the gymnasium?
Through the chair to trustee Martin, we hope 4 weeks. I would just add that we were able to advance some of the activities recently by advancing sprinklers. So originally we weren't able to construct during occupied hours, so we were working after hours and on weekends to work on the library and the gym. Since we installed sprinklers, the fire department has granted us or allowed us to do construction during occupied hours, which is helping to advance that schedule. Originally was looking more like January.
Anyone else? This is for information only, it's entered as received, so thank you very much. Controller of Building Services, Gadet, is that, did I get that right?
Controller of Facility Services.
Controller of Facility Services, sorry about that. Don't want to miss anybody's title here. Thank you very much, and Coordinating Superintendent Gerard. Moving on, folio 38, it's Trustee Watson's motion regarding naloxone kits. Trustee Watson?
Thank you. Just when you read through the motion that I originally presented, this has been changed. And so trustee Ramsey and myself are prepared to move this together and speak to it. So I'll start, if that's okay, with the chair.
Sure, yeah, so I'm a little unclear. So the motion that is on folio 38 is different than the one that was deferred? This is the one that was deferred, but it wasn't the original one.
Right.
So you're going to move this one?
Right.
Okay. Sorry.
So I just wanted to.
Point of order, can we get the mover and seconder happens, we can speak to it?
Yes, so it was moved by Trustee Watson, seconded by Trustee Ramsey. Sorry about that.
Great, thank you. So I just wanted to speak to this. I do feel that it is important to have at least one, if not two, naloxone kits within our schools. The delegation tonight brought up some very good points, and it is a very serious issue, and you do need extensive training and ongoing training. I just want to remind the Board of Trustees that there are other high schools across the province that have naloxone kits. So this isn't groundbreaking, this isn't new information. We know that high schools have been introducing naloxone kits, and so the Toronto District School Board, Limestone, Ottawa Carleton, now Ottawa Carleton is also introducing it within their elementary schools, and there are other schools, but from what I understand, it's not the teachers who are providing the kits. These are trained. I know in I think it's Ottawa, it's the principal and vice principal, or for those who are volunteering. And so we know we're in an opiate crisis. We know it's not getting better. It is true that because of the naloxone kits and them being accessible to the public, that the numbers are going down, which is a really good thing. We know that drugs do get into the school. This is a worst case scenario situation. We've been told it'll be 6 or 7 minutes for emergency responders to get there. That can be a long 6 or 7 minutes when you have a trained individual within the school who can administer the naloxone and reverse the effects. And so my own personal opinion is we do need them. I know that universities and colleges are stocking up, and for high schoolers, it's 2 months. Grade 12, it's 2 months between university and high school. And so my concern as a student may be taking something that they don't think has fentanyl in it, and it does. And I think we're in a situation where something could happen, and we're kind of sitting back hoping that it doesn't happen. But if it does, I also want us to be prepared. And so I want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep students safe, and I hope that trustees can support this motion.
Trustee Ramsey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At first, as I'm sure the board might recall, I was not supportive of this motion and the initial stages, but after doing a little bit more research, and I fully support it, and I'm strongly urging the board to also do that, and provide the support. If it saves the life of one student, it's worth every penny that we would be proposing to spend. So I'm hoping that in terms of putting our students first, that we will support this.
Trustee Waddell? Sorry.
Thank you, through you. The first thing I'm going to ask is if we can divide the question when it comes time.
I think the way we've done it the last couple of weeks is that as soon as it's requested, it is divided, so.
Thank you. With regard to potential liability, we have a requirement to act as a prudent parent. So in any situation, we must act as a prudent parent. And I consider myself a prudent parent, and I certainly would have a naloxone kit if my child were in secondary school, for sure. And so for that reason alone and the potential for liability, I'll be supporting having them move into secondary school. Thank you.
Trustee Miller?
Thank you, and through the chair. The last time, I was the trustee who asked for the postponement of this motion, and at that time I said that when this came back in the fall, I would again look at all sides of the issue before I made my decision. And wanting to gather again up-to-date information and consider the landscape. And at this point, I will not support this motion. And I want to preface this by again, saying that I appreciate all of the trustees for the time, passion, and caring that they expressed in regard to this issue, but I'd like to reiterate and be clear that even though we may not agree, by no means is anyone here not putting kids first or advocating their responsibility. I think it's really unreasonable and unfair to even suggest that. I feel, as I did back then, that as a school board, our primary mandate is education. And I feel that our time, energy, and resources are more effectively spent on educating, increasing awareness, and working with our students and staff to teach strategies and skills and learn about community support. So learning that naloxone is available free of charge, and how best to respond when faced. I also know that our community is unique in its geography and its risk factors and its resources, and there are other boards, including our local co-terminus board, who are not considering this option. So to suggest that because other boards are doing it just does not sit well with me. Our superintendent came and updated us a few weeks back, let us know that our board is working on public-wide campaigns, working with our community partners to create resources and packages which include posters and resources for parents. So at this point, I think I will not be supporting it.
Anyone else? Trustee Smith for the first time. I have Trustee Watson, but Trustee Smith for the first time.
Thank you, and through you, I wonder if someone can tell us how many students have been impacted in the schools in the last year?
Superintendent Rubinstein?
We have no clear data at this point other than going back to our emergency response procedures and dissecting some of that information. But we have a number of emergency response procedures on any given day across all of our schools. Specific to opioids, I don't believe that we have any specific data related to that.
So is it that we just don't know if there are students, or that there have been no students?
Superintendent Rubinstein?
Through the chair to Trustee Smith, I don't believe at this point that we've had a direct response to a specific identified opioid situation. We have had responses to students that have been, I'll say, struggling for a variety of reasons, whether that could be under the influence and so on, but specifically what under the influence of what, no, we don't have that specific data.
Thank you.
Trustee Martin and then Watson?
Well, I agree with Trustee Miller that our primary responsibility is education and that our resources should be focused on providing our students and our staff with knowledge about the opioid crisis and about the availability of naloxone kits. And while I recognize that we have not experienced, or we don't believe we have experienced any opioid overdoses in our schools or on our school property during these years, I do realize that it is a potential, and I do see that, I don't see the downside of having naloxone kits in our schools. I see that they're the sort of thing that we hope they'll never use. We do have to have some trained staff. I don't believe we have to have all the staff trained. We just have to have some staff trained and kept up to date on their training. I know I went to a very brief session and got my own naloxone kit just in case I ever encounter someone in my walks downtown that I might know how to use it and be well equipped. So I don't think it's unreasonable that we go ahead with the first part of this recommendation.
Trustee Watson?
So, yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't know if other trustees have heard from staff, but I have heard from a couple of teachers who work with that risk. They do carry their own naloxone kit. We do know, we've heard of those situations before it got regulated with other groups. Of course, we're in the business of education, and so we should be, and we're providing information on a continual basis across the system. And that's great, but that's not enough. We also need to be prepared. If there is an overdose, we need to be prepared. And so I hope trustees would support this, and we can make sure that, as Trustee Martin said, we hope we never have to use it, but just in case, there will be, we will have the measures put in place. If there is ever a student who inadvertently takes fentanyl without even knowing, that we're going to be prepared and move into action.
Trustee Woodcock?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. Could someone remind me about the plan for who would be the ones that would be trained in each school? Thank you.
Superintendent Rubenstein?
Through the chair, Trustee Woodcock, the plan that we originally submitted when asked to do a costing of this related to members of the emergency response teams, both elementary and secondary, and we took an appropriate proportion based on a prorated basis. The number of members we thought was the appropriate for a large secondary school versus an elementary school, and that's included actually in the report. If we look at the financial summary, those were the suggestions that were made if that was to be considered.
For clarification, so the emergency response teams are comprised of, could we be reminded of that? Teachers and administrators?
Superintendent Rubenstein?
Through the chair to Trustee Woodcock, administrators are part of that emergency response team. There are designated staff members. Sometimes those are paraprofessional staff, child and youth workers, educational assistants, or teaching staff, custodial staff. So typically it's a team that is comprised at the school level and identified.
Thank you.
Trustee Woodell?
Thank you, through you to staff. Just for clarification on folio 39, it says training materials and staff deployment, $30,000. How much is that for the training materials and deployment for elementary versus the secondary and alternative school?
Superintendent Rubenstein?
Through the chair to Trustee Woodell, when we went through that, we really looked at the number of resource kits that we would provide and the number of occasional teacher days that we required. So it's really prorated based on the number of elementary and secondary sites. So I don't have that breakdown with me, but we can certainly provide that.
Thank you.
Trustee Hendry?
Thank you. Excuse me. When I got here tonight, I didn't have any problem with this motion that I was supported, but I have to be honest, after hearing the delegation, the information that he brought was bona fide. It wasn't opinion, it was fact. And there were some things in his presentation that causes me some angst in moving forward with putting these kids in school. So reluctantly, I can't support the motion.
Trustee Watson?
So I just wanted to make the comment that we have, I know that the government has some sort of program, and I'm not sure that we would even have to pay full price for these naloxone kits. We know that it's happening in other high schools, and you know, when we look at the fact that it's doable, they're doing it, and they're providing volunteers, or it's administrators, principals, or vice principals who would administer the naloxone. I guess you really have to ask yourself, what if it was your child? What if it was your child in the school? And I mean that in all seriousness. We've had our kids go through the system. What if it was your child, as Trustee Waddell said, that the Education Act would be a prudent parent, making decisions as a prudent parent. If it was my child on the floor, I wouldn't want to wait 5 or 6 minutes for an emergency responder. There are, through Ontario and across Canada and in the States, there are many people who are putting on gloves and personal protective equipment, and they're saving lives. And so why we would think, oh my gosh, not in schools though, that people are trained. They're trained to save lives. And so I really think that that's what we need to look at. If it's our child, we would want them to get, we would want them to be administered naloxone immediately.
I'm gonna ask Trustee Woodcock to trade seats with me here. There's no current speakers on the list, everybody's.
Oh, everybody's clear? Okay, Chairperson McMillan?
Thank you, Chair Woodcock. First of all, I'd like to commend the trustees that have brought this forward, because I think that they're doing it for the sole purpose of what they think is best for our students, and that should be applauded anytime that is happening. I also think any opposition to this is not, like Trustee Miller said, not putting our students first. I think that if we had heard from public health that this was something that we should do, this wouldn't even be a trustee motion. Staff would have found it within our existing policies to make this happen already. We are hearing from our first responders, from public health, that this is something that we can do, but not something that we should do. And the second that those experts say it's something we should do, I don't believe it even needs to come to this table. Staff will look after it. We are, I think, 2 days away from the legalization of marijuana, which from all accounts has not gone smoothly, from impaired driving to who's going to be allowed to do it when, where is it going to be allowed, what type of consumption is going to be allowed. The legalization of marijuana is a bigger problem right now for our students in the school than opioid overdose. Binge drinking continues to be a bigger problem for our students than opioid overdose at the school. And I believe the training for after-hours overdoses is still a bigger issue than overdoses at the school. So we have at least 3 off the top of my head issues that are a bigger concern than opioid overdose at the school. The likelihood of this happening to our students is real. Odds are it will happen Saturday night at a party, Friday night at a party. Let's train our students to help the kid that it happens Friday night at a party. Because a naloxone kid locked in a principal's office is not going to save a kid on a Friday night or Saturday night when this is the overwhelming time that it's likely to happen. So let's not ignore the problem, but let's address the problem. And let's work to teach our students what to do when it happens to their friend on Friday night. Let's work to to teach our students what to do when it happens to their friend on a Saturday night. Let's work to educate our kids about the dangers of binge drinking, about the dangers of marijuana consumption. And let's continue to be in constant communication with the experts, first responders, public health, who right now are telling us this is something we can do, but have yet to tell us that this is something we should do. Let's trust their expertise.
Trustee Watson, then Martin, then Ramsey.
Can Trustee Ramsey go first?
Trustee Martin is after you on the list.
Okay, so I agree with what Trustee McMillan was talking about with respect to providing information, making sure that students know what to do when they're at the party. That's great. But I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know if it could or maybe will happen at school. None of us does. And so when it comes down to, as Trustee McMillan said, the likelihood is real. I don't know if it's going to happen on Friday or Saturday. I don't know if it's going to happen on a Monday. But when you consider marijuana and opiates, marijuana, the student's going to get high. Opiates, the student will die. And so they're not the same thing. And I know that just the information I've gathered, there are health professionals recommending it, not in our region. Public health isn't recommending it in the region, but there are other health professionals, public health in other areas that are recommending it.
Oh, thank you. Trustee Martin, then Ramsey.
I too agree with Chairperson McMillan's points that binge drinking is a much more serious problem in our schools and something that we really need to be providing education on. I agree that the legalization of marijuana, or even marijuana when it's not legalized, is an issue that we need to continue to provide education for our students on. I agree that the likelihood of an opioid overdose happening to one of our children is far higher after school at a party on a Friday or Saturday night. And so I believe that is education that we need to keep doing. But I don't see how providing naloxone kits diminishes our ability to provide that education. I don't see how having a naloxone kit in the school does anything other than give us backup in case there is an overdose at the school. It still doesn't take away from our opportunities to train students, to teach students about the dangers of drug use, to teach them how to deal with one of their friends experiencing an overdose after school or at a party. So I completely agree with everything Trustee McMillan said, except that I don't see how having naloxone kits in the school takes away from any of that.
Trustee Harrington, did you have your hand up before?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, Trustee Ramsey, is it
I'll
okay?
I'll be passing.
Okay. I'll come to you next.
No, I'll pass.
Oh, you're passing? Oh, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Trustee Harrington.
Well, there have been a lot of prognostications about how immediate this problem is, but we do know that there is a serious problem south of the border, and there are all kinds of students dying of overdoses. And I think that we are being a bit naive if we think that this problem will not somehow translate to Canada. What we're talking about is having a naloxone kit in a school, in the secondary schools. The total cost of this will be less than $30,000, including training. So, in terms of the amount per high school, we're talking about $3,000 maybe per high school for the insurance against this event happening. And it's all very well to say it may well only happen at a party, but what about school dances and after-hours activities at school? We can't guarantee that something is not going to happen in one of our high schools. And $30,000 seems to me to be a very low insurance premium to guard against that eventuality. So I think this motion is not only a good one, but it's timely. It's trying to address a problem before it becomes very serious in Canada. Thank you.
Oh, Trustee McMillan?
Thank you. Well, I appreciate everybody agreeing with me. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. There was some pushback on what I said, so if I could speak to that. It said that we don't have a crystal ball, and that's absolutely true. We don't. We don't know what's going to happen. But there are experts that have expert opinion on it, and that opinion is formed through years of education and training and professionalism in the field. And none of us have that, and I think that when you don't have a crystal ball, your best bet is to listen to the people who are the best educated and the most expert in the field. And right now they are telling us that it's something that we can do, but not something we should do. And again, if they ever tell us it's something we should do, absolutely, I think our staff would do that. There's differences in public health. Yes, public health in some regions are telling schools to do it. That could be because of differences in response times, differences in capabilities, differences in how close they are to hospitals, that type of thing. What we do know is our region, our first responders, and our public health, to this date, has not told us that it's something we should do. And when we say that this doesn't take away from all of the other things, I think that that assumes that teachers have infinite amount of time and we have an infinite amount of resources. I think when you're looking at training time for teachers, we're also asking our teachers to get training in math and training in literacy and training in wellness and all kinds of other things. The idea that this doesn't take away from that is a little bit, I think, not understanding the reality of a school day where there aren't enough hours to get through the curriculum, there aren't enough hours to get through everything that you want to get through, and adding more when the experts are telling us that it's not something that we should do. I think it is putting ourselves in a position that other people are better positioned to make decisions.
I don't have any speakers on the speakers list at this moment. Last call. Trustee Smith?
It's not, I have a question, and I wonder if anybody can talk about the difference between the use of naloxone at elementary and secondary. So I guess that's Mr. Rubenshue probably.
Mr. Rubenshue?
Through the chair to Trustee Smith, I need some further clarification. I'm just trying to determine what specifically.
So I guess so I can understand that perhaps.
Trustee Smith, could you ask the question into your microphone so that we can all hear it?
So
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if we have any kind of stats around use of naloxone for elementary kids. And I probably would put a break at, was it higher at grade 6, 7, 8? I'm just wondering if we could maybe look at not having it at all of our sites, not all of our elementary sites, but maybe our senior elementary sites and secondary sites for use.
Point of order, we're only talking about secondary schools and alternative programs, I guess.
Right. We have split the motion, Trustee Smith, just a reminder. And so that would be the second part of the motion with the elementary, unless you wanted to make a comment.
Well, yeah, I guess I would question whether elementary would include senior elementary or senior schools, because that may not be a good split. It might not be. It might be better senior schools, elementary, and secondary, as opposed to.
And that's the second half of the motion?
But I'm just wondering if we have any statistics about elementary use, senior elementary use, secondary use.
Superintendent Rubenshue?
Through the chair to Trustee Smith, at this point, we have no data to tell us whether there's increased prevalence or the prevalence at either elementary or secondary.
And just to follow up, do we have it from other school boards, perhaps?
Through the chair to Trustee Smith, at this point, we have no data from other.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I
Seeing no other speakers, I have no other speakers on the speakers list. Would you, we can call the question. All right. So we're voting on the first part. The motion's been split. The first recommendation is that the Waterloo Region District School Board provides naloxone kits in its secondary schools and alternative programs. And even though I'm in the chair, I will be voting on this. All right, so all in favor? And opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Now we'll move to the next part of the motion. Do you want to come back here, Mr. Chair, or do you want to stay there? Okay.
I guess we could hold it on that, but there might be discussion.
Would anyone like to speak to the motion? Trustee Martin?
I have more procedural question, and what happens, I'm wondering whether this motion is actually a valid motion as it's currently written, because what happens if we defeat this motion? That means that we don't postpone providing naloxone kits? And if we aren't postponing them, what are we doing? It's not saying that we're doing anything, we're just not postponing it. So I think this is kind of written in a negative way, that if we vote to defeat it, we...
Yeah, the motion should be written in an affirmative that...
I would think it should be written in the affirmative, and then we can have a motion to postpone.
And if somebody wanted to make a motion to postpone, then you would do that, rather than have a motion to postpone. So, Trustee Watson, it's your motion. Would you be okay with, we would just write it that the Waterloo Region District School Board provide naloxone kits in its elementary schools and rural schools?
Yes.
You're okay with that? And Trustee Ramsey, you seconded the first one? Second this one as well?
If I could just clarify, excuse me, flowing from the meeting where all of this was discussed previously, the whole intent was to approve the first part and to postpone the second part.
Mhm.
So I can understand what my colleague is saying, like delete that and then we go back, and if we want to postpone it again, then we can.
Then we'd have a motion to postpone again, that's right. So you second the wording as I gave there?
Yes.
So Trustee Watson moves that the Waterloo Region District School Board provide naloxone kits in its elementary schools and rural schools. Period. Trustee Watson, you're good with that?
Yep.
Second, Trustee Ramsey?
Yes.
Yes, anyone to speak to the motion? Trustee Harrington?
My understanding is the second part of the motion is that we determine whether we're going to provide naloxone kits in elementary schools after we receive the report from the Waterloo Region Integrated Drug Strategy. So why don't we say that? Why don't we?
We received that report? I thought we received that report already. Mr. Rubin should deliver the report. I thought that was the report that we were, that's what we got. So we are after such time. Trustee Watson?
I think it's important to gather more information with respect to elementary. I know Trustee Smith talked about middle schools, but my concern, and I don't know if we received the actual, the rural schools and how many schools, what are the response times for rural schools and with respect to first responders. And I think we need that information because at this point, I don't know which rural schools actually, the distances.
Trustee Hendry?
I'd like to move that we postpone this motion.
Until such time, or just indefinitely? We probably need to have a time on it.
Well, then maybe what I should move is that we table it and we can bring out the table whenever we get the appropriate information.
Well, that's the whole point of the motion.
So that's what he's saying.
Well-
He's saying the same thing that you are. He's just talking about procedurally, maybe a little bit different.
Okay, so, but if we table it, we're really not taking any action on it. But if we pass this motion, we're going to receive more information, especially, well, I'm just assuming, because we're talking about rural schools, you know, what's the response time? Like, would a first responder get there in 15 minutes? That's too late.
Trustee Hendry?
I think, Mr. Chair, you already, in my view, you've already answered, like this motion doesn't address the questions I don't think that Trustee Watson is referring to. The question is, when this report comes, we've already got that report. Right. So if there's more information we need, then we should just table it until we get that information.
Or defeat it and have another motion to get more information. Well, I know it's complicated, but it's procedurally what we probably have to do. I mean, there's a motion on the floor. If we don't like the particulars of the motion, then we have to defeat it and have a different motion.
You made a motion to table it.
I think that was seconded that one.
I second his motion to table.
Is that the procedure? I don't even know the procedure for tabling a motion. Is that right?
It's too late now.
Is that?
We voted on it.
Okay.
You can table the motion. I second the table. Vote on the table.
That's the procedure. Our magic wheel is telling us that a motion and a second and vote is appropriate. So there's a motion to table this motion. It's seconded. Anyone want to speak to tabling? Sorry, can we speak to tabling? Debate. We have to see note 6 now. No, there's no debate. So there's a motion to table, it's seconded, there's no debate on it. Do you know what's going on?
Yep.
Okay, everybody's clear?
Could you read the motion again, please, Mr. Chair?
Let the Waterloo Region District School Board provide naloxone kits in its elementary schools and rural schools.
And it's a motion to table.
And now there's a motion to table that motion.
Thank you.
And it's seconded, and it can't be debated. All in favor of tabling? Opposed? The motion to table is carried. Thank you for your patience with that. Moving on. Folio 40, parental leave for trustees. And Trustee Martin.
I would like to move the recommendation of folio 40.
Can we get a second for that? Trustee Waterfall, thank you. Trustee Martin, would you like to speak to that?
I would like to speak to it. This, the ministry has given us direction that we need to have such policy in place by March of 2019. Some other boards, in particular Upper Grand, have gone ahead and put that in place for December 1st. We need it before March 31st, so having it in place for December 1st is perfectly valid. And I think that that it's something that we should move forward on. It surprised me though that we don't have such a policy in place already covering trustees. So all there's no cost associated with it, because all it's saying is that a trustee who misses board meetings as a result of having a child cannot be kicked off the board as it can be for other unexplained absences.
Trustee Hendry?
Sure. When I got here tonight, I was going to vote to defeat this motion, but then I realized that it's a legislative requirement.
Not enough starch in your shirt tonight, Mr.
Yeah, I know, there's something there. Anyway, what I do think though is, or what I'd like to ask is, why can we not simply include this requirement in a policy that already exists, the one that governs trustee attendance? I don't know, I don't understand why we need to do it, because we've had trustees absent for 6 months or more, and all that was required, all that is required is a phone call. we, in my memory of the time on the board, I've never had anyone turn down on any request. So I'm okay with it in the policy if we really needed it, the board feels they need it, but I just don't think it's necessary.
Trustee Ramsey,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the initial stages, I also was inclined to suggest that this motion be put over for the new board to decide, considering the fact that the legislation has been in place since 2017. But I will be supporting it, and I just want to share an observation that I really wish that stuff to do with student learning and achievement could come to the board as quickly as this motion came. It took about 8 months for one of my colleagues' motion around year-round schooling to make it to the agenda for us to discuss, because there just wasn't enough time. And somehow this, in 3 weeks, it made it. So it's just an observation.
sorry, the year-round school, there were a couple motions there that were delayed because the trustee that brought them forward wasn't at a meeting. So I think when we're pointing fingers, we've got to be careful, right?
So, well, if you want to get back on the table and have a discussion, we can have a discussion. Okay, I just kind of had enough of the pointing from the chair and.
Well, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm explaining what happened.
Well, from your perspective, with all due respect.
Well, not from my perspective.
Well, anyway, like I said, I'm going to support this. I'm just an observation how quickly this got to the table. Okay? And I mean, I don't have to go into history.
Sure, no, and that's
for
fair.
other motions,
Yeah.
other motions that have come to the table more quickly than stuff to do with student learning and achievement. That's all.
Sure.
It's an observation.
Sure, Trustee Woodcock?
I'll be supporting the motion mainly because it's legislated. We have to have a policy. I understand what Trustee Hendry's trying to say is that we could probably cover it in a bylaw or something, but for now, we can cover it in a policy and then it's done.
Trustee Watson?
I'm going to support the motion because we do want to encourage women, whether they're having children or through pregnancy, that this office is open to everyone if they choose to put their name down on a ballot. But I do have the same concern as Trustee Ramsey. I have a motion that's I introduced in, I think it was June, and I assumed that it would be coming tonight. And I was told it would be coming. It has to do with air conditioning, setting a plan up to air condition older schools. And I don't see it here, but this motion made it months. Like it's been 5 months. I'm still waiting for my motion to come, and this motion made it. And yes, this is a worthy motion, but I don't know where my motion is and why it isn't here.
Thank you, Trustee Watson. Anyone else? There's a motion on the floor. Sir?
So, Mr. Chair, if I might, I can speak a second then. And I would like it reflected in the record, considering the times that we're in and the stuff that's being tweeted out. I am supporting this, and I'm not going to withdraw my support for it. What I mentioned was just an observation around student learning and achievement. So I hope my friends, my union friends, get that correct when they tweet. Okay, thank you.
There's a motion on the floor. It's seconded. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to folio 41, motion. Trustee Smith?
So I just have a couple of questions following up on this. So if someone takes a leave, what happens if they miss all the training?
We had the motion and it was seconded, and then we had the chance to speak to it, and then we voted.
I'm asking a question.
But the time to ask the question was during the time to ask the question.
I didn't know if it was going to pass. So I'm just, never mind. I'll ask you a question.
Okay, thank you. Folio 41. Motion, Student Voice and Ministry of Education consultations, Trustee Miller and the student trustees.
Thank you. With permission from the board, I'm ready for this over to our student trustees.
Point of order, we need the motion moved and seconded before we speak to it.
Yes, sorry, I was under the impression this was a notice of motion, my mistake. Can we get the motion moved? That'd be trustee Miller. Trustee Miller, move it? Okay, you didn't want to read it? I thought you were gonna.
Yeah, I'll read it.
So the recommendation on folio 41 is moved by trustee Miller, second, trustee Woodcock. Then we'll go to the student trustees to speak to it. Thank you.
Okay, so to read off the motion to start, that the Waterloo Region District School Board requests that the Ministry of Education ensure the inclusion of students and the student voice in any consultation process related to education issues and or curriculum change. So we as the student trustees feel that there needs to be an avenue for the provincial government to collect student voice if they're making changes to the curriculum, as we are vital stakeholders in our own education. There's currently methods for parents to voice their opinion in the consultation processes being held by the government, but students are not currently being encouraged to contribute their voices to that consultation, and we feel that that's something that needs to be done. The Waterloo Region District School Board does a great job of collecting student voice and supports student voice significantly, and we feel that the provincial government should do the same.
Just going off of what my colleague says, so when the provincial government educational consultancy occurs, we feel as though it's imperative that a broad range of voices are heard from each of the stakeholders involved and demographics as well. So this should include both parents and students, something that has not yet been promised. We understand and we've seen that there are online consultancy forms available on the provincial website. But these are also under for parent sections, which can be misleading for both students and parents.
Thank you very much, trustees Judelson, Kelly, and Wall. Trustee Harrington,
Yeah, could you call the question, please?
call the question. That's not debatable, right? That means it's.
Yep.
The recommendation is on folio 41. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried. Now we have board reports, bylaw review, ad hoc committee progress update. Trustees Woodcock and Waterfall, is that right?
Yes. Through you, Mr. Chair, we just want to update trustees on the work that's been happening at the bylaw review ad hoc committee. We've had several meetings and there are several more scheduled. It is a lot of work happening, and at this time, our last, we're here to ask for an extension to report back in by the end of November. Unfortunately, there's more work to cover than we thought. We thought we could do it by the end of October, but we couldn't. And just so trustees know, we do have a generative discussion to introduce the topic and show you the work we've been doing, scheduled tentatively for October the 29th, and then more discussion after the trustees have had time to consider everything, hopefully on November 19th, at which time we would hope to be approving some new bylaws. So with that, I'd like to move that with the permission of the board, that we report back by the end of November.
So a motion to extend until the end of November for the ad hoc, what are we, bylaw?
Yes.
Bylaw review committee, seconded by trustee Waterfall. All in favor? Opposed? That motion is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. To begin question period, we have, oh, sorry. Another board report.
We wanted to update the board about our student senate meeting. So 2 Wednesdays ago, Director Brian, Trustee Miller, and Superintendent Lomax, as well as Ben and I, were all present at the first meeting of the year. We held our meeting at the Google headquarters, and for the first time, each of the 16 secondary schools were represented at the meeting.
So some of the major topics that we discussed in our activity with the students included mental health support in the schools, substance use and abuse, equity and inclusion, inter-school discussion and activities, environmental issues, and facilities. So all of these topics we're going to follow up on with some of the students and narrow in on a few of them at our next meeting in November so that we can have a productive year and make sure student voice is included in our board table. So we're very excited for our next meeting the first week of November, and we'll make sure we get a report back to the board after that.
Excellent. Thank you very much, trustees Judelson, Kelly, and Wall. Now question period? No other board reports? Excellent. So we'll begin question period with a response from Superintendent Miller to a question that came back. It was a response to a delegation in June. So Superintendent Miller?
Through the chair of trustees, I'm going to just take a moment tonight to highlight our resources that we use to support students on the autism spectrum and talk through what that continuum looks like. The supports that are provided are in the majority, and I think it's important to note that the vast majority of our students who are diagnosed with autism are in a regular classroom environment and supported through ABA, or Applied Behavior Analysis Strategies. This is training that we provide for our teachers and our paraprofessional staff, which would include educational assistants as well as our child and youth workers. This training is done by our board-certified behavior analysts, or ABA transition leaders. They are board employees who not only do that training in large sessions and through learning series, but also go to schools to support in specific classrooms, supporting specific teachers, resource staff, and throughout schools. The other times, these strategies, which are certainly necessary for some good for all accommodation, aren't supportive for all students, and we need to look at other opportunities or other options for those students. Often in our classrooms, in our schools, all of our schools have allocations of educational assistants as well as child and youth workers, and at times these paraprofessionals are used within our classrooms to support the students within the class, some that will be diagnosed with autism and others who have some other struggles that they're experiencing in class. The other options and work that we do is all of our schools have what's called a multidisciplinary team. And this multidisciplinary team has a number of healthcare professionals, which include psychologists, speech-language pathologists, social workers. These are all be resources that are accessed by the school. Often these supports will go into classrooms and observe and support the classroom teachers in a variety of ways, as well as support the work of our paraprofessional staff. We also have a number of central supports that we're also able to allocate to schools in the form of itinerant staff. These include developmental support teachers, which have an expertise in autism, which will go into our classrooms to support teachers with specific students, as well as they have some itinerant educational assistants with an expertise in ABA strategies, which support classroom practices, build teacher capacity. The other itinerant staff that we often use is we have behavior teachers who will also go in, support our staff with a variety of strategies and work that they use, and they also work with child and youth workers when they're in schools. We also allocate our board-certified behavior analysis, or ASD experts, who are clinically are clinicians, and will also go into our schools to support our students with autism. In the second year, which was a very intensive team that we put together, was an autism spectrum disorder team, which includes 2 of our autism transition leaders, special education consultant, as well as speech and language pathologist and other resources. That is another resource we've been used to put into schools to again support that inclusive environment. And the far end of our spectrum would be when we do access congregated classes. Those congregated classes do house some of what would be our most complex students, many of which do have autism, but we consider multiple exceptionality, and that they have other exceptionalities that would go along with the autism. In these cases, due to the complexity of these students, there's some that would be in classes that are 6 students to the ratio of 4 adults. So that just gives, I think, a good overview of all the resources and supports that we provide for our students with the exceptionality of autism.
Thank you for that, Superintendent Miller. I had a hand up from Trustee Hendry.
Thank you, through the chair. My question would be through the chair to Superintendent Miller, and I think he probably knows where this one's coming from. I wonder if you could explain to us the assessment procedure. The number of assessments that are allowed per year and, or per school, I should say, and the age or the grade level that we start looking at those assessments at. My reason for asking, if I may, is I've had calls from various teachers and a few EAs, and the teacher's job of teaching would be so much easier if the children would be assessed much earlier so that they could identify issues and behavioral issues or challenges that we could address much earlier with EAs, with social workers, with CYWs in the classroom. I believe right now it's later in the elementary panel that we start actually doing assessments, and through the chair, if we could get a clarification of just when that occurs.
Superintendent Miller?
Through the chair, Trustee Hendry, we have a vast actually continuum of when we may do assessments. In some cases, for our kindergarten to grade 2 assessments, they are often speech and language assessments rather than looking at a psychological educational assessment. Often those will happen at about a grade 3 to grade 4 level would be where we would initiate many of our psychological educational assessments, but that's not to say that is our everyday practice. And in some cases, those assessments may happen at an earlier age.
Thank you. It is question period, so it's not an agenda item. Trustee Hendry, small follow-up.
Just a quick question. Do we have waiting lists, or do we have people waiting to have their children assessed over the usual number that we would do?
Through the chair, Trustee Henry, we do not hold waiting lists. Each school is allocated a number of assessments per year, and those assessments are well used by schools. And when those students are determined, those are the assessments for the year, and then there would be follow-up through multidisciplinary teams for the following year to determine when other students may be assessed.
Thank you, Superintendent Miller. Moving on, future agenda items. Trustee Waterfall?
I have a notice of motion.
And you have the required signatures?
Yes.
Excellent. You can...
That the Waterloo Region District School Board reassign the trustee parking spaces to be for general staff and visitor use, and that parking spaces further from the front entrance of the Education Center be designated for trustee use.
Thank you, Trustee Waterfall. We will refer that to agenda development. It's coming back to the board. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I would like to commend all the trustees at the table. This is our last meeting before the election next week, and I was warned, being a first-term trustee, that this was going to be silly season and lots of craziness was going to happen, and I think every single person at this table did a really good job of not bringing politics to this room, to keeping students at the forefront, and I think everybody here deserves to be commended for their behavior in the last however many months as we've been going through this campaign. So kudos to all the trustees for not making it silly season, for keeping students and our staff and their well-being at the forefront of what we were doing. So best of luck to everybody next week, and with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Trustee Harrington, thank you. Second, Trustee Watson, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.